I'm Caroline Hyde. This is the best of Bloomberg Technology, where we bring you all our top interviews from this week in tech. Coming up, the president-elect meets the press. Donald Trump faces reports on everything from Russian hacking to the media itself. Plus, it's her job to make sure tech titans play by the rules. Our exclusive interview with EU Competition Commissioner Margrethe Vestager. And driving the future in Detroit, our interview with General Motors Chairman and CEO Mary Barra ahead. But first, to our lead. In his first formal news conference since winning the US election, President-elect Donald Trump tackled one of the most controversial issues plaguing his administration this week: Russian hacking. Trump has previously cast doubt on Russia's role in influencing the US election and in the accuracy of US intelligence efforts, and did so again in these remarks Wednesday.
As far as hacking, I think it was Russia, but I think we also get hacked by other countries and other people. If Putin likes Donald Trump, I consider that an asset, not a liability, because we have a horrible relationship with Russia. Russia can help us fight ISIS.
Trump also vigorously denounced unsubstantiated reports that the Russian government has gathered compromising information about him. So we wanted to take a closer look at the hacking itself here on Bloomberg Tech. The FBI, others in US intelligence, have linked the DNC breach to a group of hackers they say are backed by the Russian government. That group is known by some as Fancy Bear or APT28. FireEye was among the first security firms that identified this group and its connection to the DNC hack, and came out with additional information on the group's work this week. Take a listen to our conversation with FireEye Head of Threat Intelligence, Laura Galante.
Going back to 2014, before this became the political hot rod of an issue of 2016, we were then profiling this group, which we call APT28, and attributed their operations to the Russian government as the sponsor behind them. And what we've seen is a variety of targets, everything from journalists in Chechnya to defense attachés in Eastern Europe, to then the elections in the DNC and the World Anti-Doping Organization, the same entity that put the ban on Russian athletes, or some Russian athletes, before the 2016 Olympics. So a variety of different targets that we've seen this group go after. And they've done it in a couple ways. They'll breach the networks using malware, so software used maliciously to get into a network and take data, frequently email. And then we're also seeing another side of these operations that play out in the leaks, on WikiLeaks, on DC Leaks. This is when the troves of emails have come out that change the conversation. And it's the combination of that network intrusion and then the ability to change the narrative through that leaked data that's been so powerful in the arsenal of what APT28's been doing, particularly in the US in 2016.
And using social media as a means to do all of this, is there a risk that this is actually still going on? How much could the US government, indeed the German government, still be compromised?
This isn't just going on, it's the group behind this is innovating, and they're taking it to Europe next. We'll also see this continue to occur around policy issues in the US. The elections were just one of a variety of targets that this group's gone after. And when we look at the upcoming elections in the Netherlands, in France, in Germany, we're seeing the same mechanisms: ability to get hashtags trending, ability to push certain types of documents to particular journalists, a really focused ability to change how the conversation in the press plays out that this group is particularly attuned to. And they do this very flexibly. So they don't need to go change the malware, the tools that they use. They just need to change the flavor of how they get their message out. And that's what's so powerful here, and also easy to deny. So if the narrative changes, was it just a sense of what needed to be reported on, or was it actually operations? In what we've seen, there are clear intentional operations with the forensics behind it that link this back to a Russian government-sponsored effort.
Those forensics, can you illuminate for us how you managed to track them back to being sponsored?
Sure. So there are hallmarks within the malware that this group's been developing since 2007 that give us a few of these indications. For instance, the compile times, the marks that show when malware was built. continue to go back to the UTC-4 time zone, the time zone that Moscow and major Russian cities are in. And over 90% of the samples that we've tracked over time align to the working hours, 9 to 5 p.m., when this malware was compiled. We also see the marks of a really well-resourced effort. The malware that's been built shows certain techniques to try to evade detection so that people researching the malware, catching the malware, can't unpack it and understand it as well. These are the types of telltale signs that the people behind this, the developers behind these tools, are really thinking about how to do it. They're resourced. They aren't just buying tools online for $300 and deploying them. This is a state effort that takes years of thought, years of planning, and then the targets themselves say so much about this. The combination of caucus agencies, so agencies in Georgia, defense attaches, ministries of foreign affairs, these are the types of targets that show a state's interest. And with the totality of that evidence, that's what's led us to believe that the Russian government's the likely sponsor of the group.
I have to say, I had no idea hackers kept a 9-to-5 regime. You learn something new every day, Laura. But give us an idea of the work you're doing, the light that you're shining on all of this. Are governments, institutions, bodies listening to you? Is this a game of whack-a-mole, or can actually something be done to tackle the vulnerabilities?
The question right now is, where is the line between acceptable state espionage that's been happening since the beginning of time, right, and aggressive measures that interfere with the internal affairs of a state? So, to put it very boldly, what is sovereignty in cyberspace? And do we consider cyberspace, or do we consider information space? That's the question at hand between Russia and the U.S. right now. Russians and Chinese governments have long considered this broader, more psychological definition of how they consider this domain. While on the U.S. side and other NATO countries, they've thought about this in terms of networks and systems, ones and zeros. So do you take a more expansive view, or do you think of this in terms of a more traditional technology approach? And then what are the implications of choosing either mentality?
And so when we hear from President-elect Donald Trump saying he doesn't think he'll be attacked while he is president in terms of cybersecurity, should we be believing him or pouring cold water over it?
At FireEye, we've long said it's a matter of when, not if. We've long seen, and the U.S. government's long seen, a variety of different breaches, whether they're on the Department of Defense's networks, whether they're against companies. And what has changed is the type of actors and the type of intrusion. What hasn't changed is the predilection for rival countries and for state-sponsored efforts to go after key government targets in the U.S. I'd be surprised if that changes in 2017.
That was FireEye Head of Threat Intelligence, Laura Galante. Now, while Trump is claiming he is the victim of fake news, well, Facebook is taking steps to help curb it. The social network announced a project that will include stronger partnerships with media companies, support for local news, and better efforts to educate users on how to avoid hoaxes. The company's journalism project follows a year of debate over Facebook's role in the media. It faced questions whether the social network is biased in the way it presents news to users. Members of the media will be updated on the efforts on a new Facebook journalism project page. Coming up, Jack Ma's Trump card. Can the Alibaba chairman deliver 1 million new jobs amid heightened tensions between Beijing and the president-elect? And a reminder that all episodes of Bloomberg Technology are now live streaming on Twitter. Check us out at Bloomberg Tech TV weekdays, 5 p.m. in New York, 2 p.m. in San Francisco. This is Bloomberg. Alibaba Group chairman and founder Jack Ma met with President-elect Donald Trump Monday at Trump Tower. Ma says the two men discussed how Alibaba is focused on creating 1 million US-based jobs over 5 years.
It's a very productive meeting. We discussed about helping the American small business selling things through Alibaba platform to China and to Asia. So we mainly talk about small business and young people and American agricultural products to China. And we also think the China-USA relationship should be strengthened, should be more friendly and do better.
Ma's visit is the latest from a growing list of business leaders and CEOs eager to work with the president-elect. Bloomberg's David Weston caught up with General Motors chair and CEO Mary Barra for an exclusive interview at the North American International Auto Show and spoke first about the upcoming administration.
There's a lot of opportunity. We have more in common with the administration and the president-elect than we have at odds. And we're looking, I think, to strengthen the country, strengthen, obviously, business performance, because we're a big provider of jobs. We provide over 100,000 really good paying jobs. And also then looking for some reforms, some regulatory streamlining. And, he's already made statements about the tax code. Those are all things that are going to improve our business, allow us to reinvest.
So there's opportunity there for you as you look
I
forward.
Definitely believe there is, and also people needing to understand this is a very complex business with long lead times. I mean, the products, the Bolt EV, which is built in Lake Orion, Michigan, and the Traverse that we just launched as well is built in Lansing, Michigan. Those were decisions made a few years ago, and so we need to understand how investment is made, but then look for the opportunities.
Let's talk about autonomous vehicles for a bit, because that's something you've invested in a lot. You've been on the cutting edge of. Where does that project sit right now within GM? How are you doing? And everybody now is announcing some sort of autonomous venture. How are you doing against the competition?
Well, I think we feel very good about where we're at. We have vehicles, getting real-world experience in San Francisco, in Arizona, and now in Detroit. And it's not just about miles traveled. It's about experiencing all the different situations. And there's, San Francisco, downtown San Francisco, there's not a much better place to experience a lot of traffic, a lot of things that just, come into the roadway, double parked cars. So our vehicles are learning a lot, and I think you'll see some significant movement from us early this year.
When I talked to Dan Amman last June, when I also sat down with you, he talked about changing from a model where you're selling cars to actually providing a service for a fee, almost like a subscription service. So is that where are you in that process? Is that realistic?
Well, I think as we get to autonomous vehicles, we believe it'll first start in a service, in a rideshare type of environment. And I think customers will define exactly how it goes. But also in today's business, we're also very excited about what we just launched with Cadillac, because we have a subscription opportunity for people who really want to, drive that performance V-Series car on the weekend, but need the functionality of an Escalade. Those are the type of things that we're looking at and experimenting with based on the customer.
So 2015 record year for vehicle sales. 2016 couldn't possibly match that, and in fact, it beat it. So you set a new record. What does 2017 hold in store? Can you beat that record again, and how important is it to you?
Well, we think we're going to have another very strong year, much like 16, and at General Motors, we're looking to continuing to improve. So that's our goal, to build on the momentum of 15 and 16, carry that into 17 on top of great vehicles like the Bolt EV, the Chevrolet Traverse, the GMC Terrain, and we think we can have and are working hard to make sure we deliver another strong year.
So you have to have great product that people want to buy. People also have to have the money and be willing to part with it. So as you look at the factors that could drive 2017, to the upside or the downside, what are the ones that are most important to you? Is it wages? Is it disposable income? Is it overall consumer confidence? What really drives it?
Well, I think consumer confidence is very important, but we're seeing household wealth go up. So, I think if all the trends, we look at a number of different indicators. If they all stay in the direction that we think we are, so barring some unforeseen shock, we think we're going to have another strong year.
So one of the topics that's much discussed is wages, whether we're starting to see wage growth. We just had numbers come out on Friday that indicated some wage growth. You're a big employer in the United States and elsewhere. Are you seeing wages go up materially?
I think they're going up as expected. And, as we look across, that's very important that we manage that, but also understand where we fit. I'm very proud of the fact that of the 100,000 jobs, whether they're technical jobs, whether they're assembly jobs or in our manufacturing unit, we have good paying jobs that allow, people to live a very good life.
Still ahead, our exclusive interview with EU Competition Commissioner Margaret Vestager, her regulation battles with US tech giants from Google to Apple. Plus, high-profile hacks are on the rise, and security software could balloon to $46 billion industry, according to IDC. We'll speak with Matthew Prince, CEO of Cloudflare, next. This is Bloomberg. As 2017 gets going, the US tech giants are gearing up for the hurdles they face in Europe. Companies like Apple, Facebook and Google all head to court to settle a number of cases regarding taxes and privacy. Bloomberg's David Gura spoke exclusively with the European Union's Competition Commissioner, Margaret Vestager, who has famously targeted these tech titans. Take a listen.
Well, I consider this a very important issue because we cannot do our job if we do not get the right information from the businesses in question. And the concern that we have here is that Facebook didn't give us the right information during the merger procedures. And that, of course, is a huge problem if that appears to be true. Because if we're not told the full story, well, then we will not be able to take right decisions and enable competition also on the other side of each and every merger. And that is why this is so important, both in the concrete case, but of course also as a takeaway for the entire business community, that we will police our procedures to make sure that we get the right information when we ask for it, because otherwise we cannot do our job. And we try to do that as best as possible within the very, very short deadlines that we work in.
You've been looking at Google as well. You've gotten a reply. The European Union has gotten a reply from Google. How satisfied are you with what that company had to say?
Well, we just got the last part of the Android answer, so we are in the process of analyzing it, and therefore it is too early to say what will be our final decision. But we are in the process of going through it. It's very substantive, and obviously there's a lot of data to go through. So in that respect, it is too early. But now we have the working material. We have the answer from Google on the cases in question.
You've seen the rise of populism, as we all have, the shifting political firmament, and I wonder what that means for you in your office and for looking at competition in general.
Well, I think that it's very important that people see that we do our best to do the job ahead of us, to make sure that citizens are not being cheated when they're in the marketplace, that businesses do not agree with prices in the back office or petition the market, but that businesses actually do compete with products, prices, the services that they can offer customers. Because I think for every citizen, it is important to see that the authorities do their job, and they do the job actually to service the citizens, in behalf of the citizen, where the individual might be too small, but where we together actually can do something good for making our societies work. In that respect, I think that it's important what we do.
How pivotal do you see that Apple case, the Apple Ireland case, as being to your office? It certainly elevated you to a new prominence, made you better known perhaps in Silicon Valley, and there are those who have some animus toward you as a result of it. How do you make that relationship better between your office and tech firms in Silicon Valley?
Well, we, of course, try to make it absolutely clear that we have no issue or no grudge against any company. What we're aiming at is behavior. For instance, the thing that happens if one company or a group of companies are given state aid which is not available to other companies, that seriously sort of unlevels the playing field. That disables fair competition, and that is the issue. I don't think that as a company, when you are a competitive, when you have a competitive culture, you want to innovate, you want to present the best products to potential customers. Well, how can you approve of your competitor having benefits that are not open to yourself? And in that respect, of course, we also serve the business community by enabling fair competition.
The EU's Competition Commissioner, Margaret Vestager there. Now, cyber threats remain a major concern for businesses and government agencies alike going into 2017. This week, we got reports that both ECB President Mario Draghi and former Italian Prime Minister Matteo Renzi were among those hacked in a massive cyber spying operation, leading to 2 arrests. Our next guest runs a fast-growing cybersecurity firm with clients in more than 50 countries. He says that it's time to build a better internet to ensure the number of hack attacks drop. Here's Cloudflare CEO Matthew Prince.
You know, I think that we have already seen what 2017 is going to bring in the end of 2016, where large cyber attacks against firms like Dyn that brought down a substantial amount of the internet, and then attacks against the various presidential campaigns were a big part of the story at the end of 2016, and we just don't see that decreasing in 2017. So more and more, you know, we're busy at Cloudflare.
When you are seeing the attacks coming in, does it matter particularly as to where they're coming from? Have you identified particular regions, particular groups that continue to be the perpetrators? Because as much as we just seem to always be saying, oh, China, Russia, but actually are there many different countries where this comes from?
You know, one of the things that's amazing about cyber attacks is that they're incredibly democratized. We see some of the largest attacks launched by what turn out to be 15-year-old kids in the UK, where at the same time we see large attacks launched by nation-state actors as well. And so I think it's often very hard to attribute who the attack is being actually launched by. We often have some circumstantial evidence based on who is being attacked, but from our perspective at Cloudflare, regardless of who's launching the attack, we want to always be able to stop it.
And the weak spots are going to become more plentiful as the Internet of Things becomes an actual reality, not just something we witter on about as journalists and interested technologists. IoT, mobile, what are the key threats when it comes to the building up of frequency?
You know, I think what people didn't understand about IoT was, you know, everyone thought, why does it matter if my toaster gets hacked? But what we've learned from the last few months is that if your toaster gets hacked, then it can be sort of commanded into a virtual army to then launch attacks against other pieces of critical infrastructure. And so what that means is that if we don't have security around some of the IoT devices in all of our homes, then that is going to make us more vulnerable to those large attacks. And so that's one of the things that we're thinking about at Cloudflare is how can we wrap security around those IoT devices, as well as wrapping it around the big corporations, national governments, other organizations that we help protect.
So talk to us about the demand that you're getting. Who is coming to you wanting of your services? Because you're a company that has been building up funding and you're on the IPO trail as well. You need yet even more cash to expand. Is that what it's for?
Well, we haven't actually raised money since December of 2014, and I think we're on a path to being a public company. But there are two reasons why companies go public: either because they have to, they've run out of other sources of funding and they need more cash, or because they want to. We're in the fortunate position to be able to pick and choose the timing for what's right for us, and so we'll pull the trigger on that when it's right for us. From the perspective of our customers, Cloudflare today has over 6 million customers. We sign up about 15 to 20,000 new customers a day. They range everything from tiny little mom and pop SMBs up to national governments, Fortune 50 companies. 16 of the 17 presidential candidates, including President-elect Trump, was a Cloudflare customer. In fact, everyone but Hillary Clinton used Cloudflare in order to protect themselves from cyber attacks this last presidential campaign.
It's quite a marketing line that you can use. Why, you say you either become a public company when you want to. Why would you want to? Is it because arguably you have more people to answer to? Is it almost a marketing element? Your name becomes more recognizable.
I think that the CEO of Zendesk said it best when he was asked why did he go public. He said, at some point you have to move out of your parents' basement. I think there's a right time and place for companies to, be just a couple of people in a garage, to take funding from venture capitalists, to take funding from larger private equity institutions. And then eventually you have a responsibility to your investors, to your employees, in order to take that company public. And so I think that's a path that we're on. We're going to do it when we think the time is right for us, but it's definitely something that we're working toward.
In 2017?
No, I don't think that we'll do it in 2017. I think that 2017 is going to be a really sort of distorted year for a lot of different reasons. I think that especially the changes from the Trump administration around tax policy, the repatriation of cash to a lot of tech firms, I think is going to result in a lot of distortions in the market. And oftentimes a lot of volatility isn't good for new entrants into the marketplace.
Coming up, the healthcare tech industry has grown dramatically since Obamacare was passed in 2010. How the industry will fare if President-elect Trump repeals the law. Next. And if you like Bloomberg News, check us out on the radio. You can now listen on the Bloomberg Radio app, Bloomberg.com, and in the US on SiriusXM. This is Bloomberg. Welcome back to the best of Bloomberg Technology. I'm Caroline Hyde. Speaking at a news conference Wednesday, President-elect Donald Trump said he will repeal the Affordable Care Act. Then Thursday, the US Senate took the first step towards repealing the act in a razor-thin vote. Obamacare helped connect the US healthcare system to a new era of technology. We explored the changes in tech under the groundbreaking law.
When the Affordable Care Act was signed into law in 2010, one of its main goals was to bring U.S. healthcare into the digital age. And since then, investment in digital health technology has exploded. Venture funding in the sector rose from $1 billion in 2010 to $6 billion in 2015. That money is going towards things like electronic health records and computer modeling to track healthcare spending. And major companies want a piece of the action, too. IBM launched its Watson Health unit in 2015, and since then it's spent $4 billion on related acquisitions. Last year, General Electric said it expected its $1.5 billion healthcare IT unit to grow more than 20% over the next 2 years. But now, the industry is bracing for a serious shift in U.S. healthcare policy. President-elect Donald Trump promises those changes will come as soon as possible.
As soon as our secretary is approved, almost simultaneously, shortly thereafter, a plan. It'll be repeal and replace.
That was Bloomberg's Kaylin Meehan reporting. So will there be a slowdown in technological breakthroughs, innovation and investment if Obamacare is repealed and replaced? Joining us now from Washington, Atul Rusty, partner at Accolade, an investment firm focused on healthcare and technology. And with me in San Francisco, Lisa Mackey, CEO of PokiDoc, a startup that provides infrastructure technology for the healthcare industry. Atul, I'm going to start with you. Will, in fact, the Affordable Care Act be fully repealed? Can it be fully repealed, in your view?
Yeah, I think it's pretty unlikely that it's fully repealed without an alternative. Over 20 million people have been added to the system, many of which come from states where Trump won, like Michigan and Wisconsin. In fact, in those states, before Affordable Care Act, more than 14% were uninsured, now less than 6%. So unless there's a viable alternative, I think it's highly unlikely. Furthermore, I think there are many aspects of the Affordable Care Act that will continue and flourish that healthcare investors have been investing in.
Lisa, you heard the views from Atul. You yourself are at the heart of helping modernize, make more efficient the infrastructure behind healthcare. Is this something that, even if it is repealed, would ever be moved away from, the efficiency search, the drive for it within healthcare in the US?
I completely agree with Atul. Many of the drivers, the market drivers for technical innovation, are not going away if ACA is repealed. The shift of cost to the consumer, the shift to value-based care that we're seeing that is led by CMS but followed quickly by the private industry, the private insurance markets, that's not going away. And that's driving a lot of what we're seeing in innovation today in the medical industry.
So the underlying factors are still there. Atul, does it change your opinion in the investability of some of the healthcare in terms of certain verticals within it? Because there is an element of uncertainty at this period in time.
There's definitely a level of uncertainty, and I think if anything, it's causing a pause in the buying process and elongating sales cycles. But in the long run, I don't think this is going to be a big impact. I mean, lower cost, higher quality has been the mantra within the Affordable Care Act, and it's also within the Trump approach. And so as Lisa was mentioning, whether it be payment or consumerization or even shifting the site of care, all of that will continue and maybe even accelerate. And even when you think about the digitization of the medical system, the stimulus had $30 billion that was allocated to move medical records from paper-based to electronic-based. And that's been the foundation for a lot of the new software and applications that are being developed to advance healthcare. And so I think innovation and disruption will continue within healthcare technology investing, regardless of how this shakes out.
Lisa, has it slowed your decision-making process in any way, the electoral changes and administrative changes that will come?
No, many of the bets that have been made to digitize the healthcare industry were made prior to the ACA and will continue. From our perspective, and here's the only point that I'll differ from Atul on this, is even with the economic stimulation, even with the adoption of electronic medical records, much of that's written on circa 1990 software. What we're really expecting to see from this administration and their commitment to investing in infrastructure is a commitment to modernizing healthcare in the U.S. really for the first time. That's what companies like PokiDoc are devoted to. We're creating open software development platforms to bring these products and solutions to market quickly. Healthcare systems, private insurers, even CMS, they've made their bets. Those buying cycles are over for them, and they're starting to deploy on platforms like ours.
So Atul, what's the spectrum look like out there at the moment when you're analysing the environment? Who is the most interesting to be investing in? Which particular parts of the healthcare system do you think are the most ripe for disruption?
So the areas that we primarily invest in are at the intersection of healthcare and technology, where people are investing in software applications that enable higher quality, lower costs. And again, a lot of that, the foundation has been laid with the digitization of the medical records. And so we find that to be quite robust. I mean, we have companies like TigerTex that are within the clinical communication and workflow space, and their whole mission is to improve outcomes and lower costs, and they're benefiting from the trend that we're seeing. Even as you look at shifting site of care from hospitals to home-based care, where it's lower cost and patients like rather be, we have companies like Premise Health and Home Team where they're at the center of that. And so almost across the board, we're seeing still tons of innovation and disruption. But I think with any discussion about ACA repeal, there is some uncertainty created, and so we could see some pause in buying. We're seeing elongation of the sales cycle.
Is that something PocketDoc is experiencing when you're looking at your suppliers, those that you're working with? How have those sorts of sales discussions gone?
Truth be told, healthcare is probably the longest enterprise sales cycle known to man. Putting that aside, we haven't seen a slowdown in that sales cycle for PocketDoc. At the same time, we have 10% week-over-week growth in emerging companies adopting, coming to our platform, signing up for our APIs, and building product in production today. So that hasn't slowed down. I do hear, and I certainly hear in the industry from other companies out there, that they're experiencing somewhat of a slowdown. They certainly did as they were waiting for the results of the election. Now as we go in, I think most recognize that the ACA, that's not going to impact a lot of what they're doing today. It's certainly not going to impact the out-of-pocket cost to the consumer. That it's driving a lot of these innovations or new access models, but it will have some effect for sure.
And where's the competition when you're looking at startups helping provide these sorts of efficiency to the healthcare? I mean, they must be coming out of Asia as well as Europe. Is it only US companies that will be adopted by US healthcare providers, or do you think they'll go out further afield?
I think platforms like ours that provide an open software development platform allow companies from outside the U.S. to enter the U.S. market in ways they haven't before. The other thing it allows is other industries to start to insert themselves into the healthcare workflow, like financing, banks who want to offer financing to consumers who can't afford a particular procedure, or supply chain companies like Amazon who want to start providing different goods and services, durable goods to healthcare. We're going to see a lot more of that as we come into this year and as there is a modernization and move to the cloud across the industry.
Still ahead, London snatches Snap, why the social media giant is banking on the UK ahead of its potential $25 billion IPO. This is Bloomberg. There are a few deal headlines that caught our eye this week. Fitbit has purchased Vector, a startup focused on affordable luxury smartwatches for an undisclosed amount. This follows its acquisition of smartwatch maker Pebble back in November, a sign Fitbit is stepping up its offerings for wearables beyond fitness devices. Meanwhile, Airbnb is branching out, investing $13 million in the latest funding round in Resi. That's an app for securing restaurant reservations. This is another move to expand Airbnb's offerings for travelers, possibly making it a one-stop service when booking a trip. Resi will take a few months to integrate its app fully into Airbnb's services. And finally, Square has integrated its system with Wix, a cloud-based platform with nearly 100 million users. The deal is a large online-based contract for Square, which has mainly focused on brick-and-mortar businesses and had previously struggled in this space. The parent of the popular Snapchat messaging app has named London as its international headquarters this week. Snap also said it will pay British taxes on sales booked in some overseas markets. Now, the move is a win for the UK, as it's been attempting to lure businesses to the country in the wake of the Brexit vote. Bloomberg's Caitlin Meehan reports on the road ahead for Snap's public offering.
Snap is gearing up for its hotly anticipated IPO. The parent company of the popular messaging app Snapchat could be valued as much as $25 billion when it hits the public market this year. Once famous for disappearing images, it's now rebranding itself as a camera company. Its first hardware product, Spectacles, has gone viral thanks to an ultra-limited release at vending machines in select cities. Meanwhile, Snap's user base continues to grow at breakneck pace. And although the company's 150 million daily active users are mostly based in the US, it is gaining ground in Europe. Snap does not turn a profit yet, but it is showing revenue growth. eMarketer reports it's on pace to bring in just under $2 billion by 2018. Now, investors want Snap CEO Evan Spiegel to prove he can grow Snapchat beyond its young demographic.
For more on Snap Inc.'s choice of London as its international headquarters, we checked in with London-based Bloomberg Technology reporter Adam Satariano and asked him, well, was this a smart move by Snap?
They're kind of formalizing something that's been going on for a little while. They've been staffing up a lot in London over the past year. They're up to 75 people in the city, up from 6 the previous year. But having this as their tax hub is unusual because a lot of tech companies have been putting themselves in Ireland and Luxembourg to take better advantage of lower tax rates. Apple, Amazon, Starbucks, McDonald's, a lot of other companies have been touching on regulators' ire as a result of that.
Exactly. Is this potentially a reaction to how we've seen, in particular, the European Competition Commission react to some of the tax arrangements the likes of Apple, for example, had in Ireland?
Yeah, I think a lot of companies have been spooked by what they've seen from the European Commission and other regulators going after some of these tax havens. But at the same time, we shouldn't sort of put Snap on a pedestal too much here. I mean, the tax rates in the UK have been coming down. There's some optimism among some business leaders that tax rates would come down even further as a result of that vote. And so they could be trying to get in a little bit ahead of all that.
And certainly an upside for the United Kingdom amid what a lot of uncertainty surrounding the Brexit vote last June.
Yes, certainly. But for Snapchat, this is a logical hub because the global advertising industry is really headquartered in New York and London, and since that's a big part of their business, it makes sense for them to have such a big office here. They've opened up a shop in the Soho neighborhood. They have one building already open, and they're looking for another one.
And is this expansion a slight race ahead of what is expected to be their initial public offering coming as soon as March this year?
Yeah, Evan Spiegel, Snap's CEO, a big part of his pitch to investors for this IPO is going to be the company's global opportunities. It's clearly done well in the United States, especially with younger people, but to justify that valuation, which is said to be $25 billion or more, they're really going to have to show that it's going to resonate in other countries. In Europe, they have about 50 million users, 10 million in the UK, and so that number is going to have to continue to grow quite rapidly to justify that high valuation.
Bloomberg's Adam Satariano there. Now, let's get an investor's take. Now, as Snap expands ahead of its hotly anticipated IPO, what do money managers, what does Wall Street want to see from the burgeoning social media camera company? Here with me, Sunny Dillon, founding partner at Signia Ventures Partners. Welcome to Bloomberg Technology. UK headquarters internationally, a smart move?
I think so. Having worked in Soho myself, it's the hub of the creative industries in London. You have advertising, you have creative agencies, you have other tech companies and startups tapping talent in that local market. So I think just as a hub of creativity, hub of advertising, and as revenue becomes more important going forward, I think Soho is a great place to be. Notably,
we're seeing expansion in Europe, but we're also seeing expansion as far as Asia as well. This is a scaling up effect ahead of the IPO, is it?
I think so. I think you have to understand your global audience. You have to understand the local influencers, the local types of style of content, what Gen Z messengers are all about in each different territory. They're not a homogenous group. People are very different in terms of their habits and styles of how they communicate and what kind of visual messaging they choose to express themselves. So I think having an international footprint means being closer to your audience, understanding your audience better.
So of course what they have to do ahead of the IPO is drum up the excitement that they are worth 25 billion, that they have growth potential outside of perhaps a social media app. How are they doing this at the moment?
Yeah, so I think that its CEO is 26 years old. He's kind of stayed very authentic to the target Gen Z and millennial audience that have kind of been the bread and butter of this rapid ascension that Snapchat's seen. So I think evolving way beyond just messaging. And it's been able to show itself evolving over time, most recently with Snapchat Stories, with the face filters, with geo filters and lenses, etc. So I think augmented reality is one area that's very, very exciting for Snapchat. I think that increased activity with brands and better targeting and better analytics are another area that will fuel the revenue machine that a public company needs to kind of fulfill. And a whole host of other things just quite, on that similar trajectory. But AR is pretty much the most exciting, I think.
I think what's interesting there is you talk about working with businesses in the same way that sort of Facebook leveraged not only building ecosystems, helping gaming companies, but also working with huge brands, the Unilevers, to target you and I.
Sure.
How much is it copying Facebook? How much is Facebook copying them?
Yeah. I think the biggest, most egregious kind of copycat move was from Instagram, copying Instagram stories. It's literally the same product as Snapchat Stories. I think that there's been a whole host since mid to late last year efforts from Facebook at basically ripping off various features that have performed very well for Snapchat. However, the difference here being when you're already going mass market, you're no longer cool. When you're shoving ads and monetization efforts down the throats of your audience, it's no longer native, it's no longer natural. And right now, the one thing that Snapchat has working for it is that it's an empathetic and authentic one-to-one, one-to-many kind of platform that people want to be associated with.
But then how can it keep that if it gives the revenues that the investor base are going to want to see?
Very, very good question, and that's exactly the one that remains to be seen. When you see companies have to focus too much on monetization, you see the original ethos of what those companies were founded on starting to kind of degrade over time. We're seeing it now with Medium here with the blogging company here in San Francisco. We saw it with Twitter, post-IPO. So the jury remains out on that, if they can stay cool post-IPO.
Will they always tackle just the millennials?
If they keep coming up with new ways to express themselves and new ways for millennials to express themselves, I think it's a safe bet to say, as they keep refreshing themselves with the new crop of Gen Zers coming in, for example. I think the Snap Spectacles have been a great example of one way to do that. It says it's a camera company now. Genius piece of marketing. If you can have someone open up your app through the camera, they view the world as you want them to see it, or you view the world alongside them many, many times per day. And what you choose to overlay on top of that is similar to the way that the web portals used to be down in the 90s with the original ISPs.
I mean, so much is being hoped for by the ecosystem, Silicon Valley, those that want to start to see exits come thick and fast in 2017. Yep. Mm-hmm. Do you think they will live up to the hype? Will they, the way that they're pursuing their roadmap to IPO is the right one at the moment?
I think defining growth, defining analytics, and defining metrics, and so showing those going up and to the right and growing quickly. That's what they've been able to do. There's been some speculation recently that some of those metrics have been slightly falsified, which have been vehemently denied by the company. But I think if you look at where Snapchat is compared to where Facebook was when it went public, they do paint quite a different picture in terms of real money, actually getting to dollars and revenue.
This week, Hyde posted its first annual revenue decline, down more than 2.5% from the year before. The Taiwanese company is the main assembler of Apple's iPhones and has suffered as the global smartphone market went through its worst year on record. Hyde is also the world's biggest contract manufacturer of electronics. Up next, the iPhone turned 10 this week. We'll take a look at how it became Apple's most important product and whether the company can ever recreate its success. This is Bloomberg.
Today, Apple is going to reinvent the phone.
10 years ago, Steve Jobs first unveiled a new product called the iPhone. At the time, it was seen as the heir to Apple's other hit products, the iPod, albeit an expensive one at $499. But since then, it's revolutionized the smartphone market, destroying then-industry heavyweights Nokia and BlackBerry and inspiring a handful of new rivals around the world. and Apple has sold over 1 billion iPhones to date. They helped drive up Apple's stock price more than 850% to its peak in 2015. In 2016, Strategy Analytics reported that smartphone operating profit hit $9.4 billion worldwide. Apple alone made up 91% of that. But with these numbers come high expectations. The iPhone is now Apple's most crucial product, making up 63% of revenue in fiscal 2016. And that's worried some investors because annual iPhone sales fell for the first time last year. And Apple's operating system held on to just 12.5% of the global market versus rival Android's nearly 87% in the third quarter. Still, analysts remain overwhelmingly bullish on Apple's stock, such as Nomura, which believes the upcoming iPhone 8 will shatter all previous sales records.
That was Bloomberg's Caitlin Meehan. Now, since the iPhone took off, Apple has been under pressure to prove it can recreate the kind of sales success. We checked back with Activate CEO Michael Wolff. Take a listen.
With over 1 billion iPhones being used today around the world and 100 million of them in the United States, they're poised for a large percentage of that base to upgrade to a new iPhone 8. And they've got a lot more coming. I mean, it's likely that they're going to have much more integrations of Siri. Their own messaging app, iMessage, will have bots and another functionality built in. And let's not forget that there's going to be a new operating system next year, likely in the middle of the year. So Apple already has everything they need to be successful, and they don't have to have all of the market. They can skim off the most profitable customers, the ones who will not only buy their phones, but will participate in the iTunes and App Store.
Michael, you're sounding pretty bullish, and in fact, over the past decade, ever since they launched their iPhone, the whole market has been pretty bullish. This is analyst recommendations on the Bloomberg. In fact, the majority, all the way back to 2007, have always said buy. The green chart here, I know you can't see, I'm just spelling it out for you here. The green here shows how many analysts say buy this stock. Look at that, 80% at current levels. The lowest they ever got was 65% back in 2008 or thereabouts. Generally, analysts say buy Apple. They look through the gloom. What about their movement into perhaps the emerging markets? Does that spell to you that they could be going for lower margin profits, or will they just go for the higher end products in the growing middle class, higher class in India and indeed the likes of China, where it's slightly slowing down, Michael?
Yeah, where Apple comes out with lower cost products, they don't seem to do as well. They can once again, they can go after the premium customer. They can go after the people who want to have the entire Apple experience. All they have to do, really, is to get a large percentage of the billion people today who are carrying around an iPhone to be able to continue that growth. And they've got a lot of other avenues into that growth, including new products like new Apple TV products and a new TV operating system that will allow them to get a lot more revenue out of this, not just in terms of the sale of a phone.
Now that does it for this edition of Best of Bloomberg Technology. We'll bring you all the latest in tech throughout the week. Tune in each day, 5 p.m. in New York, 2 p.m. San Francisco, and 6 a.m. in Hong Kong. Remember to tune in on Tuesday. We'll be talking with Neil Reimer, partner and co-founder of Index Ventures. That's all for now. This is Bloomberg.